Okay, welcome to week 3 of Introduction to Game Development. Today we're going to be looking at 2 more layers of the layered tetrad. So just to review, last week we talked about the inscribed layer, which is the layer that the game designer creates when they are designing the game. The designers and the developers come up with the aesthetics, the narrative, the technology, and the mechanics, and they inscribe those through code and data into what they envision the game is going to be. And then once players get a hold of the game and begin to play it, the dynamic layer is then revealed or created depending on your point of view, which adds another layer of interaction to the game. And then as the player community brings that game's attention to the larger society, then the cultural layer takes effect. So today we'll first start by talking about the dynamic layer. So the book has this great quote, "A game isn't a game unless someone is playing it." So to many game designers, until the dynamic layer appears through gameplay, then it's not really a game, it's just code. But gameplay can lead to emergent behavior. There are some great examples of this in different areas, but a few that I want to talk about today are from the Pokemon trading card game. Sometimes game designers will create aspects of the game that, when played, reveal weaknesses in that design. And in the Pokemon trading card game, if you're not familiar with it, there are tournaments, both local, national, and international tournaments, and sometimes cards that have been designed for casual gameplay are found to either be too disruptive or too powerful, or when used in combination with other cards, cause an unfair advantage, and so they're banned from tournament play. This is an example of one of those cards. Sometimes a card will reveal a flaw in the rules, and so this card revealed that it was unfair to allow whoever went first, which is generally decided by a coin flip, to play what are called trainer cards, because those trainer cards can sometimes cause an unfair advantage, and since it's based only on a coin flip, whoever wins the coin flip does not get the option to play a card, and this was a result of this Hex Maniac card and the unfair advantage it provided. Sometimes cards seem perfectly fine until they are used in a wider context, and that was the case of the Blaine's Quiz Show card. In this case, the issue came up in a multilingual tournament, where the global tournaments are usually played with players using cards that have been localized into their home country languages. And in this particular card, you had to guess a name of a Pokemon that based, and in this particular, and for this particular card, you had to guess the name of a Pokemon based on the name of its attack. And this kind of fell apart with multilingual tournaments because then you have to guess the localized name or the name of the based in the language that the player was using or the player that was guessing. And so to avoid that confusion, they just banned the card from tournaments. Sometimes games have intentional emergence, where a game is designed, this is particularly true with sandbox games, where a game is designed to allow the player and to encourage the player to do things that the designers hadn't intended. And Minecraft is a canonical example of this, one of the most popular sandbox games arguably ever created, designed with the intention that players would do interesting things, especially as they introduced redstone circuits and other add-ons and expansions. Sometimes there's unintentional emergence, where the designers will do something and not realize the consequences of it. An example of that is the Street Fighter II arcade game. In this game, one of the unintended emergent behaviors that came up were attack combos, where in the original Street Fighter II game, players who were very skilled and quick with controls could do combo attacks that would not allow the player to dodge or shield or prevent those combinations. The original designers noticed this possibility but thought it was beyond the capability of anyone to exploit, and so they didn't do anything about it. And once players began using it in the wild, they decided to capitalize on this, and later sequels of the Street Fighter series awarded extra points for combos. So now let's talk a little bit about the cultural layer. So cultural layer, a great example of a game that had a big impact from the cultural layer was World of Warcraft. So World of Warcraft had both positive and negative effects. So one of those was taking items that were difficult to find, or taking characters and leveling them up to a certain level or a certain set of stats, and then selling them in online marketplaces, selling those accounts. And several people made lots of money doing this, and rather famously, even though it's technically against the terms of use from Blizzard and most other online games to do this, lots of people made a lot of money doing this. World of Warcraft was also notorious for being somewhat addictive, to the point where some people were convicted of child neglect while playing the game and neglecting their children. And in a couple of cases, children actually died because their parents were so obsessed with playing video games, and World of Warcraft in particular. And so this not necessarily a new problem, but one that World of Warcraft and other highly immersive MMORPGs uh, became well known for facilitating. Another impact of games as violence and sexual content became a concern of legislatures was the development of the ESRB content rating system, voluntarily enforced in the United States, but mandatorily enforced by law in many other countries. So the ESRB system rates video games based on their content. So whether we're talking about dynamic emergence or negative cultural impact, this comes back to the question posed earlier. As game designers, where does your responsibility end? If you design a game that has profoundly negative effects on society or on individuals, do you have some culpability for that? Do you have a responsibility to do something about it? Is this something you should actively try to prevent? So this is a subject of debate amongst game designers. Where does their responsibility end? Does it end at the inscribed layer, the dynamic layer, or the cultural layer, or none of the above? Anyway, if you have any questions or comments, reach out on email or through Slack.